Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where and when you are watching us from. My name is Mutathi wa Shirawanyaga, Mujiro wa mbari ya Karigi, na ngwihoka kuma ngongo ciothe iria ciumaga huho. Muri thayo. Today is a beautiful day. Just as always, once you are here in Washira Speak channel, it's always a beautiful day. So somebody was asking me the other day, why do I keep saying it's a beautiful? It is a beautiful day. It is the 12th day of July, the year is 2023, and oh my. Today we are having an interesting conversation. It's a hot topic, especially here in Africa, and more so in terms of petroleum and all that, and mines and oils and the policies behind it, and just the whole discussion. We're going to get right into it. That's what you're talking about today. We want to understand the mines and the politics behind this oil and all that. And today I have a very, very interesting panelist lined up here for you. You can see people already started sending in their comments, so allow me to just read this one comment by the overall show saying we are here eagerly waiting. Thank you very much for tuning in. So, guys, allow me to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. I'm going to start with Meshach. Meshach, please introduce yourself. Tell us what you do and anything you might want to share with us.
So, good morning, good evening, and wherever you are, my name is Meshach Milan. I'm a petroleum engineering student, fifth year. This is my last year. And I welcome you all to this conversation. So we'll be engaging more about petroleum, and welcome all. Welcome you all.
Thank you, Bon Engineer, for sparing your time to be here today. I heard that you're a senior member of that institution. But moving on to the next engineer, Collins, please introduce yourself and anything that you'd like to share with us today. I'm not sure if Collins can hear me, but if he can't hear me, we'll get back to that. Timothy, please, you're a friendly face to this show. You can introduce yourself as Collins is coming back to the broadcast.
Hello to you all, Timothy Mabango, administration practitioner and a public policy consultant. Well, about this show, we'll discuss about the Africa Resource Curse, the fact that Africa is the richest in terms of natural resources, but all along and all together remains the poorest. I hope to learn from you, and I also hope to share my wisdom. Thank you.
You have I don't know, you have put it quite well. That's what I like about you. So it's actually you have started off with my first question, but before we get there, hold your horses, Timothy. Before we get there, let me go to Collins. Collins, we had lost you. Please introduce yourself.
I'm sorry about that. My name is Collins Maina, a
I think I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening on Collins' side, but I don't know if he can still.
And apart from that, I'm also a good friend of the show.
We see how it goes. Collins, go ahead.
Can you hear me right now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, as I was saying, my name is Collins Maina, a petroleum engineering student in my final year. And apart from that, I'm also a good friend of the show. I'm happy to be here discussing matters Africa. That's all.
Thank you very much. I would also like to say, Collins are among the people who are always in the background, making sure the show is going through. So it is indeed truly a friend of the show. Now, guys, before even get to where Timothy had started us off, let me go back to you, Meshach, and just ask you. The other day we had a discussion on the Finance Act, which was previously the Finance Bill. And it was passed, and there's some politics behind it. The court has stopped it. But now, from an engineer who's based in these matters of petroleum, what does that really mean for Kenya, especially with the introduction of this 16% as the new tax rate for petroleum products? How does that affect, especially tell us from your own space of petroleum engineering, how does it come about to now be the effect that it is right now, Meshach?
Okay, thank you very much, Washira. So, I'll take you through about what is going global. This is a global issue, particularly the petroleum sector. We're currently facing inflation. In all these are global because these are global issue, and we are the post-corona era. So, what I'm trying to say is that in Kenya, right now we are facing several issues that we need to come into terms with it. This is a reality, and the president has told us that the reality is we are in a very bad situation, and we
Mhm,
need there are some things that we need to brave ourselves, and we need to forego some things. Like, for example, the president was saying that the other day that about maandamano, this thing that Raila is causing in this country. It is
mhm,
an issue that it is actually causing an economic crisis in our country, and it's not one thing that leaders should come in together and talk about this issue and solve
yeah.
amicably and bring
Mhm,
up with a very good solution. Now, coming to about 16% increment levies.
mhm,
There are some levies within the petroleum sector, especially when the government is trying to import oil. There's some
mhm,
levies. You have road levies, you have railway levies. So, for you to maintain roads, you need money, and that's why you see we have constructed so many roads in this country, and so to
mhm,
maintain them, it needs a lot of money. That's why the government had to increase 8%. They had to come up with a plan of an increment of 8%, so that they can try to at least cut minimize borrowing and also utilize our own resources in terms of maintaining this
yeah.
infrastructure.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that we need to face. We need to come into reality with and
Mhm,
address it as a whole. So that's all I
yeah.
have.
Yeah, thank you, Meshach. And Timothy, you were saying something while you're introducing yourself, and I'd like us to go back there. And I just have that point blank discussion. Do you think that some of Africa's problem is because of its natural reserves? And if yes, why do you think so? Because you are saying we are the poorest. Indeed, truly, we are. Okay, we are regarded as the poorest continent in Africa, and yet we have uh, these mines, we have these products, especially natural products, are coming out of Africa. Are this the problem that Africa is facing?
About Africa, I would first and foremost like to agree with you. Yes, Africa's resource is primarily our problem. But at the same time, there are two ways of looking at things. One would say the hen came before the egg, and another would say the egg came before the hen. So for Africa, even before our resource issue, we have primarily the challenge of leadership. So for the resource curse that we have, primarily the biggest problem, the core of the problem is our leadership. If our leadership was strong and
Yeah.
firm and prudent,
So
we
what
would
you're
not
saying, Tim, is that the problem is not us having these reserves. The problem is our leaders.
well, primarily the leadership, secondarily the resource, if that makes it clear.
How? How? What do you mean the resource? Tell us more.
Um, okay, the problem of Africa, if I can take us back to the history of Africa, we look at civic studies and we are told Africa is the cradle of mankind. But
Mhm,
when did we start experiencing whatever we are experiencing? If we
mm,
cry that indeed the European colonial powers or whoever took our resources and that's why we are poor, it's like comparing to a boy who
mhm.
claims that because his father did not leave inheritance for him, that is the reason he is poor. There is a quote that goes, that while a child, if you're
Yeah.
poor as a child, your parent could be the problem. But if at age 35 you keep complaining about that, you are the problem. We
Yes.
have cases of African chiefs who sold slaves to
Mm,
Europe. So those slaves would have provided us with labor, would have provided us, you see, with the skills, but we
mm,
sold them. Another
mm,
thing, even when we look at the bargaining power we have as Africa, you
mm.
find we have, for example, cocoa in Ghana, but the biggest producers of chocolate, which is a product of cocoa, is countries like Germany and Belgium. So if we can provide all these resources, our African leaders send them abroad, then we keep complaining that it is a problem, then we are wrong. Yes, they might have impoverished us. I do not refute that. But at the same time, countries like Vietnam, for example, Vietnam was hard hit by the US during the Vietnamese War. But looking at Vietnam and comparing its economy to most African countries, we are lagging behind. Talking about leadership, look at Cuba and Fidel Castro. If we keep complaining that we cannot do it on our own, you see, the problem with Africa again is that we have the highest autonomy of self-disregard and a lowered self-esteem. We think we can't do on our own. Cuba distanced itself from the US and the Western powers. Currently, it's doing well. Even in Kenya here, we ask for Cuban doctors. Libya under Gaddafi, it has a lot of oil. It used it well. There was free education, free oil. You'd be paid for staying where you are. I wouldn't even have to work if I was in Libya. You'd be sleeping, and I have a monthly stipend of like 60,000. So as much as we keep complaining of resource, I would like to echo and mirror so clearly to all of us. Leadership, leadership, leadership.
Leadership, it actually ends and starts and begins and whatever. Circumnavigate around leadership. And you have actually brought something up, and I'm glad you have said that we have a problem of skill set, leadership, resources. But today I'm glad because we have two petroleum engineers in the house, and they're going to be telling us, do we really have this problem of skill set and resources and all that? But before I do that, before I pose that question to Collins, let me read these comments coming in. Tim Tyrek saying Kenya actually is undertaxed, and that's the problem. The bitter pill was a necessity, not an option. And then we have also Tim Tyrek saying that Africa ain't poor. The problem we have is trying to copy paste the credit system. You'll tell us about the credit system, Tim. And then if you see anyone in Africa continent getting a serious loan, it's because the individuals are wealthy. If you see someone with iPhone 14, the phone was bought on cash, no credit, unlike the first. Wow. Some sentiments coming in from Tim there. Thank you, Tim, for that. Now, Collins, let me go back to you. And you have heard what Timothy has said. He has said, okay, the problem is leadership, true. But also we have a problem of skill set, and we also have a problem with the resources. But I'm mostly concerned with where he has said about skills. I'm concerned because that is what really concerns you and Meshach here, because you guys are studying for this. And what do you mean we have a problem of skills? Please tell us about that.
First of all, I'd like to disagree with him. I think he didn't hear your question clearly. I think your question was, some of our problems lies within us having resources, not the entirety of the problem. So leadership, in essence, is part of the problem we have, but us having resources also is a contributing factor. And I say this because if you look at the continent of Africa, it's a continent with an abundance of resources, from gold in South Africa, to gold in Ghana, petroleum in Kenya, gas in Mozambique. And it's for this reason that Europeans decided to carve out the entire continent for themselves. It's not because of how beautiful our women were or something of that sort. It's because they wanted to exploit our resources to the very core. They wanted to plant us completely. So that's why they sat down somewhere in Berlin and decided, why should we not divide this entire continent among ourselves? And for decades on end, they've been using our resources, exporting them to European markets, processing the resources, then giving us processed goods. And even though we earned our independence, in essence, we are still colonized in a way, because they left, but their institutions still remain. That's the reason why we are having this conversation in English, though we are as black as can be.
Yes.
So, in essence, they left, but their systems still run here. So that's why if you have a resource, we have to exploit it to them. So in a way, it's like we are depending on our captor to save us. So you see the paradox within. So I'd like to say the problem of resources in Africa is it's like a paradox of plenty. Because if you look at the average African, I believe he derives very little, if any, benefit from ownership of the resource.
Yeah.
So now, I'd like to say that yes, indeed, some of the problems you have stem from us having resources, but not the entirety of our problems. And now to your question of skill set, I believe the very highly trained individuals within Africa, but I don't know why. But for some reason, we like to hate our own. And I'm not saying this lightly, because sometimes you walk into a room, for example, and you hear someone say, "I can never employ a Kenyan engineer." And it's not one time you hear that. You hear that several times.
Yeah.
So if from the onset you don't trust my skill set, there's very little I can do to help you.
But are you guys being trusted? Are you able to be trusted, especially for civil engineers? And I know our friend is listening, a civil engineer. Are they trusted? They're building a road one day, the next it is not working. Come on.
I can speak for myself. I can speak for myself and say that I believe I'm a very trustworthy individual with a lot of knowledge, but no solid structure to employ my knowledge within. But yes, there's a lot of skill set within the continent of Africa. That's why you find that someone studies here for 5 years, goes to the US, for example, and they never come back because they're never appreciated where they come from. So I don't think our problem lies within us having a low skill set of anything of that sort. I think that's all I had to say on that.
Thank you, Collins, for that. That one is a very intriguing conversation you've started there. I don't know, especially you engineers. I think you'll defend yourself and tell us why. Because also we are wondering, some of them want to try bishops, and I don't know. Okay, let me not get there. But Tim, there's something that I've been said. He has disagreed with you. I'll be giving you a right of reply later. But allow me to go back to Meshach, because actually Collins spoke of something that should be also talked about. In Kenya, just a few years ago, they had issues of petroleum in Kenya. Wow, petroleum has been discovered in Kenya. Wapi? Ngamia 1. And today, we cannot see anything happening. What happened? What is happening there, Meshach?
So, thank you, Shira. So, Collins was trying to answer something about the skills. Let me first say that, let me talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, defend your people.
About the skills, Kenya is blessed. Like, for example, Africa, let me say Africa as a whole, Africa is blessed with a lot of skills. Actually, if you see somebody, I was reading Twitter the other day, and somebody in Italy tweeted that, why don't we have this kind of buildings anymore? And the reply he got was, because there are no more slaves. Slave trade is not happening. So that shows you that from those eras of 1800s, 1900s, where we had slave trades, those buildings that we have in the West, they were built by Africans. So Africans from the beginning had a lot of, we can say it's blessed with a lot of human resource. In terms of resources, human resources, something that we are proud of. And even right now, post-COVID, you see where in the West are trying to come to Africa to lure them to go and boost their economy and something, and also bring the economy back to rejuvenate back the economy. That's the term I can use.
Yeah.
So you see, that shows you that Africa is blessed with a lot of resources actually, and human resources is something that we are very proud of, and we are blessed with. So to go about the Ngamia 1 here in Kenya, first there are so many issues that came in about since it was discovered, oil was discovered. One of them is community conflicts. So some people went and corrupted the community about. You could see that there's a bigger share the government is taking. Even there was a time the president went there and talked harshly that hii mafuta yenu nani anataka during the campaign period. So
Yes.
there were people there are some these minute leaders who are telling them that the president wants to take up your oil and something like that. You know, Africans, we are used to corruption, and corruption is corruption is a vice that we need to get rid of fast, so that for us to see development. So there are so many issues that were brought in that even they are chasing these Talo groups, these Talo engineers. Also, another thing, it is about the economy, about the economic factor. You know, building the pipeline from Gamia 1 to the coastline. These are our terminals that we have here, this coastline. It was very expensive. That economic factor was also an issue.
But I
So
saw there was a pilot project. They were using some lorries, some trucks.
yeah, it was, but it was not. Using trucks is not so much viable. We cannot continue using trucks because the cost that we are using to it was our own. It was in they used to cut the cost, that exploration cost and transportation. It was our own. It was us funding them. So the government saw no need of using of it was not viable. It was not economically viable. That's what I can say. So
Okay.
yeah, and also corruption is also you
Yeah.
saw these tenders. In Kenya, there's times that when you try to procure these tenders, somebody can, hey, give this one to they give this to my family, give this to this, somebody wants some shares, and that's what
Yeah.
is happening right now in some with
Yeah.
our leaders. It's not that it is our politics, but that's something that's happening with our leaders right now. Somebody wants some shares from from something. So corruption and also economic viability, it so that that thing it rendered that thing useless. So right
Okay.
now, you cannot say that it has come to a finality that it cannot happen again. But in near future, we hope that with change in our leadership, we'll see we can have some hope. But I don't think
Yeah.
as of now, because we are too late, because right now the globe is the world is moving toward green energy. So I think it is our resource that we just because of our leaders, there are some says everything that they did, it rendered it useless, and it cannot
Yeah.
happen again. Something, so it's a dream. It's a pipe dream.
But let me take that with there is hope. There's a dream, but there is hope. I can see
Yeah,
current technology is saying that our leaders are considered the problem in essence of not being competent, which also stems through our hunger, kitu kidogo, during elections. Hence, we put pressure on candidates to satisfy the need. The need of citizens. Hence, candidates get loans and some sell their properties to get money. Thus, when they win elections, they get a chance to recollect election money back by squandering funds and not performing. Okay, so Tyler Technologies is taking us back to the topic of leadership here, especially in these matters, oil and mines in Africa. I can see Rebecca CIP saying interesting conversation, following and taking notes. Thank you, Rebecca. I can also see Thyrex TM say, when corruption works for us, we call them connections. When it works against us, we call it corruption. Back to the main problem, which is us. And that's where, Tim, you come back. Timothy, you started with this conversation of leadership, and I had Collins tried to, had a different school of thought. And I can see Thyrex Technology is taking us back to that similar conversation. I want to give you a right of reply to the initial disagreement, and also just tell us, especially what is as what pertained to Kenya, especially in Gamia 1. Mesha has told us about corruption, the leadership issue. I even wonder, you're a public policy. I don't know is there a policy that says we have to be corrupt in Kenya? You tell us whether you studied something, some sort of that. But please, Tim, go ahead.
Let me start where Collins left.
Yes.
Well, Collins, back to just whatever you said. You find that we have all the skills we need in Kenya, for example, including yourself as an engineer. But how comes, using your own words, we are unappreciated here in Kenya, for example. Recently, I was looking at news from the US, and the current mayor of New York is a Kenyan. The SpaceX project, which revolves around expanding the American prospects in space, among the key superintendents is a Kenyan. How comes Africans, including it should be Elon Musk, who must be from South Africa, not sure of that, but how comes Africans go to Europe and then they succeed, while in Kenya or in Africa, for example, they do not succeed? That literally beats the gravitas of economic logic. Talking about Ngamia 1, I may not have the technical details or the specifics, but from what is in the public domain, we have the Africa Oil Energy Corp, which is British company, and the Total Energies, the Canadians. They were to look for investors to help us mine our oil. But later on, it should be like 3-4 years back, they kept complaining about investors not showing interest in Kenya. So we are left to wonder, do we really even have enough oil in those mines? Because if there's enough oil, we would not be struggling to get investors in the first place. About the policy prospects of the whole project and about the African corruption, well, definitely there is no policy permitting corruption or encouraging corruption. But as we always tell you, the law is only on paper. Practically speaking, it's not lawyers who run the country or judges, it's the executive arm. Politicians run everything. And where they run everything, you do not expect them to act as statesmen. About now, my point, which I talked about leadership, and I was so categorical with my words. I do not refute that resource is part of the problems, but again, I said primarily leadership, secondarily resource. Resource is just an excuse that we come up with to complain that, you see, we have a lot of abundance, and that's why the Wazungus came. They came with the Bible, left with our resources. There are many theories and many stories, beautiful stories to support that theory. For example, there are some who claim that Mali has over 50 Mali has over 600 gold mines and produces 50 tons of gold per year, yet France has over 2,000 tons of gold. 2,000 tons in gold reserve, yet with zero gold mine. There are still some who will complain that Europeans come and mine lithium and other minerals from Congo, yet Congo, most of the people do not even have electricity. But you see, if we talk about resource being a problem, from my research and statistics, US, Russia, Canada, Iran, they're among actually the richest, not among the richest. When you look at top 10 countries in the world with natural resources, those countries do have natural resources. You look at their economies, they're comparable to those resources. How comes Africa, we have a resource problem and we keep blaming Europeans? I like giving an example of Uganda. Uganda's president has ruled over 40 years, or rather, let me say above 35 years. He still blames the previous regimes for the problem. So, yes, we have a problem of resource, but it is not the main problem. If our African chiefs sold our slaves, recently we heard about, what is this report called? The one that listed Uhuru Kenyatta, people like Putin having offshore accounts. I've forgotten the name. So if that is the kind of leadership we have, somebody rules, somebody is a mere meter reader by the time a country is gaining independence, like 15 years after, his family is the richest in perpetuity. Mobutu Sese Seko Kukumbendu was a banger from Congo. During his time, he was among the richest presidents at the caliber in terms of, well, the caliber of Putin, the current day Putin, yet his country languished in poverty. Mansa Musa of Mali, the fourth Mansa of Mali, was the richest. Actually, theory has it, legend has it, that he's the richest man to have ever lived. When he was going for pilgrimage in Mecca, he kept giving out gold for free. Yet even current day, Mali has nothing to show. Burkina Faso, under Thomas Sankara, when Thomas Sankara took power, it was a poor country, but he took the chance to utilize his natural resources and the country's wealth. And currently, okay, not currently, during his time, Burkina Faso did well. There were social welfare projects and everything. went at almost free. Even the literacy level rose. So we should not continue blaming the resource abundance as the problem, but look at ourselves in introspect and stop blaming the European powers for sequestration of our resources and everything. There is much we can do, there is much we should have done, and that is what caused us to be where we are.
Thank you, Timothy. That is
So
quite
primary
interesting.
leadership, secondarily resource. I agree,
Yeah,
resource has contribution to it, but from whatever I have explained, primarily leadership, secondarily resource. That is my take.
we have had that, and that goes on the record. Primarily leadership. Second, okay, thank you, Tim, for that. Even for that interesting, the way you put it. I can see some more comments coming in. Live, laugh, and love saying tuned. Hard work leads to easy life. Saying the collapse of Ngamia One project is the most untouched subject by Kenya media. We have live, laugh, and love saying we have a lot of minerals, but the problem with Africa is leadership and foundations of leadership. That's the root cause. We also have live, love, and love saying that again, the media, which can help fight some corruption practice nowadays, are controlled by political parties. And we also have hard work leads to easy life, saying Kenya is a broker country. We gain much via taxing imports than any other resource we have in the country. So we need to be talking about squandering and mismanagement of revenues in African states. Thank you guys for your comments. Continue sending in your comments. Collins, allow me to go back to you. And there's this discussion: is it leadership, is it resource, and all that? I don't know whether you want to respond to that still, but this is also my question to you, because I understand there's a lot of technicalities behind this. Let us just get a glimpse of the process of how it goes about. For example, Ngamia One, they discover there's petrol there, there's oil, sorry. And once they discover that, then what is the process? Walk us through. You are the engineer here. Tell us, then what is the process until now it gets to our petrol stations, to our gas stations? How is it? Why is it difficult? Why is it very expensive? Like Meshach told us initially, it is not a cheap affair, and especially the way they were doing it with with the trucks taking it to Mombasa. What is the process, Collins?
Thank you. First, I'd like to agree with Timothy that indeed leadership is a big problem in Africa. And I like that you said resources are secondary. I think the first time he tried to downplay the effect of resource on our problems. Back to Ngamia One. So if I remember well, exploration for oil started in Kenya somewhere around 2011. I don't know how old you are then. For me, I was 10. Maybe you are 30. I don't know your case. And by 2012, we had struck our first oil. I think they drill what we call a wildcat. A wildcat is an exploratory well. It's drilled to confirm presence of the resource. So by 2012, there around, we had struck our first oil. And the president was very happy, said it on the news, it was all over. All of us were excited that we are going to become a petroleum exporting country. So now, striking oil is just the first step of the process. You have to drill other wells and complete them, then start production of your oil. And then once you produce oil, you need to a way to transport your oil. And the best way to transport oil is by pipeline. So the Kenyan government, in its wisdom, so it tried to construct a pipeline from Turkana to Lamu, and the pipeline was supposed to stop to be completed in 2016. But till now, there is no pipeline in sight. So therein lies the first problem. You commit to do something and then you don't do it. Then after that, I believe it was Talo in having a joint agreement with Africa Oil and Total to drill the oil. So by somewhere around 2017, they signed an agreement with the government to drill somewhere to the tune of 2,000 to 4,000 barrels, to produce 2,000 to 4,000 barrels of oil per day. And coming into 2019, I think, was the first time Kenya exported oil, and it was around 200,000 barrels of oil, which were exported to China. And from that one sale alone, Kenya made $12 million. Using a conversion rate of 100 shillings, that's somewhere around 1.2 billion shillings. And that was just for one export. So you can see the amount of money that will be gained from that project. But that was what we call an early oil pilot scheme. So it was in essence a test to determine whether Kenya could become an oil producing country in the future. And Kenya successfully passed the test. So after that, we now need to develop the field fully in what is known as an FDP, a field development plan, because that 200,000 barrels was gotten from just a small portion of the field. So you need to now develop the field in its entirety. And before this, you need to write to the government how you plan to develop the field, how you plan to produce, your pricing, and therein comes the taxation on your product. And if you look at tallow very, very well, if you look at how the news has been going on very well, tallow has had problems with the government in terms of taxation, because I believe they are very highly taxed, and it's a business meant to make profit. So if at the end of the day the taxes are more than your profit, the only other option is going away from it. And if you look at somewhere around 2015, tallow decided to cut its budget in Kenya. And so most of its production was focused in West Africa, Ghana to be specific. So now after the early oil pilot scheme, by around 2019, 2020, there was when COVID started. And if you looked at it well, during the time we were facing the pandemic, all of us were staying at home. And one of the key customers for the oil and gas industry is people driving cars. So if you're not driving cars, there's a downward shift on the price of oil. So your numbers start not making sense right then. So if I had invested 2 billion, believing oil will be at 100 barrels, and now $100 per barrel, and now it's $20 per barrel, I need to rethink my decisions. I don't know if you can get me.
Yeah, we can get you.
Yeah. So therein lies another problem. And then by 2021, they were supposed to give the field development plan to the government, which was rejected. So they went back to the drawing table and did another plan, which was presented this year, somewhere around March. And I heard the CS talking, and he said that whatever profit we could derive from the oil therein is less than the money that had been invested. So that's another problem again, in essence. Another problem why we are not producing oil from Turkana is, I believe, there are struggles with the community based on water and land use, because a lot of people have to be displaced for you to construct the rig, because it will be as big as several square kilometers. So I think it's multifaceted. There are a lot of things at play that at the end of the day hinder us from producing our oil effectively.
Yeah.
That's all.
Thank you, Collins. Before I let you go, just look at this question. Sipo Kwaku is asking, are the oil fields in Kenya privately owned?
No. If you look at the Kenyan constitution, all mineral resources belong to the government. So if you want to drill oil, you have to sign what is known as a concession agreement. So a concession agreement is like a joint agreement between a government and a private company, for instance, to exploit a resource. So therein you state the taxes to be paid, the royalties, the land use, and everything therein. But no, you don't. I can't decide to wake up today and drill my own oil. It's against the law.
Yeah, so for the man from the water who was trying to buy land in Ngamia 1, now you have it. You cannot buy and sell that. I can see Cynthia Jumaine saying, congratulations, engineers. We have Live, Laugh, and Love saying we have resources, but greed finished as Africa. Mark is telling us this is a very informative talk. So informative talk. Thank you, Mark. And we have Kevin O'Daniel saying it is the judges, most of whom are corrupted by Kitu Kidogo, that have failed to close cases in courts. And we have Live, Laugh, and Love saying if we can pay tax and proper channels that can be accounted, we will. We can grow as a nation. Pay tax, build Kenya. Thank you guys for your comments. Continue sending in your comments. We'll be reacting to them. Now, Meshach, we are here before I go back to Timothy because I know Timothy has something to say in terms of leadership. Leadership is really coming in my comment section here. Meshach, we are blaming leaders. In the spirit of Timothy Mabango today, and Collins has decided to join that bandwagon. We are blaming leaders. We're blaming the politicians. But why should we not blame you people, the petroleum engineers, the engineers in general, the technocrats, the experts, the scholars, the learned people in the country? Why should we not blame them and say, you are also part and parcel of people to be blamed, especially you now as an engineer who is studying that? Why should we not blame you and you're studying that? Measure.
Okay. What I can say, why we are not blaming ourselves, because first, the foundation that we were created here in Kenya does not favor us. So you see, for you to be a leader, actually there are some things that here in Kenya, not like the leadership that we know that we are being taught, but being leader here in Kenya, you need something. You need to have money. You need to have something so that you can do people. And for you to win the masses here in Kenya, you need to be corrupt. And there's some things that we are used to, that we became accustomed to since our early age. You cannot like, even if you take me to try and convince the 10 people here about I have good policies, this and this. People saying talk to Kidogo. If you don't have that Kidogo, then go away. You see, those are some of the challenges that we face, because we have very good leaders that even during the past previous election, we had very good leaders that we could elect, but Kenyans, our tendency is just to get money out of these people and forget. So it was about these two horses that if you are not in Raila, you are in Ruto, and these people had some tactics that they lured people. So, and their tactics, we all know their tactics, money. That's one factor that we need to get rid of, so that you can get new leaders. And I need to thank about the African Union. This thing has woken up this Africa. There's some leadership academies being created. We have African Leadership Academy in Rwanda, another one in South Africa. So the new crop of leaders that we expect in future to come and take us to the right channel. Even me, I know myself, even though it is hard right now, but I believe in future, I'll become a very good leader with the technique. Even though it is difficult, but I know there's some changes. We are seeing some changes. We are seeing some changes here in Kenya. I'm seeing them, like people are voicing out their frustrations. So they're saying that we need new leaders, and that calls for a wake that's in future. We are going to expect some changes. It's not even that it's going to take long. I think 10 years or 15 years, people will be tired with this leadership that we are having right now. This leadership of being duped with some small amount, and then we vote to another, or tribalism, ethnicity, which has been in this country for a very long period of time. I think it's one thing that we are right now, we are facing some changes, and this thing is dynamic. The country is becoming, and I appreciate that it is going very fast. So why as engineers, I can say right now, for us to succeed here, first, there's some poor payment. There's nothing that can motivate us to go into to at least maybe help this.
Why don't you not be motivated by the love of your country?
No, I cannot be motivated. I cannot say that I'm not passionate about my country, but I need oil. Like the car needs an oil for it to. You need to oil an engine. So
okay. Okay.
So for me, I feel
Yeah.
like I need to first get at least
Yeah.
where I can be appreciated. I can go to some to a place where I can be appreciated. Then come back if I'm at least I'm well enough. If I've been
Mm.
fed enough, then I can come
Mm.
and help my country. You see,
I hear you.
you cannot be poor and help a poor person. It's very hard. Very hard.
Yeah. Kwa
Yeah.
Kiswahili wanasema vipofu wawili hawawezi oneshana njia. And
So, like for
Timothy,
example,
mm, go ahead,
for
Mila.
example, you can see we are having the crisis about the doctors. You know, the doctors are not being appreciated here in Kenya. So
Mm,
you see, if you compare the amount of money Kenyans are being paid, and with the
mm,
current inflation, you know, the current inflation shows that a doctor who earns to 50,000, that amount, if when you factor in inflation, all those cost of living and everything, that to
mm.
50,000 can be about 50,000 of 2002. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when you compare Kenya to Britain or other countries, you see these
Mm,
countries, they pay their workers very well. Even though
mm.
even though they are also facing inflation, but they have some factors to cushion their workers. So I
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
say that in Kenya, we need to, with this leadership thing, we need to come in unison. Leaders need to come and agree. We need to elect new leaders in the parliament. And I can say
Mm,
that what I can say is, like, we, the Washira, the Collins, and Timothy, we need to get into this leadership position. We need to, even if it is convincing people, we need to find ways of convincing these guys or these
yeah.
masses
But
of
now,
how.
Meshach, you said you are going to get a job in abroad, and then you come back when you are good.
Right now, one thing I can say,
Yes.
illiteracy level was very high. We are
Yeah.
trying. The illiteracy level in Kenya is very high, but we are getting rid of it by everybody going to school now. Right,
Yeah.
the government has done some things that we need to get rid of
Okay.
illiteracy, a free
Okay.
school, something. So I think with literate levels, people going to school, I think
Mm.
in future, in the next 10 years or 15 years, of which this is the Generation Z, which we are
Yes.
ushering in right now, I think in
Mm.
future we're going to see some changes, and we are getting into this leadership position by fire. Anything we need to, by force or
Okay.
everything, we
Okay.
need to get
Okay.
there and make
Thank
some
you.
changes
Thank you.
that favor us and favor the next generation.
Thank you, Meshach, for that. That was really, the hindsight information. Now, let me go back to your team. Team, leadership is being mentioned here. And you're the closest person to a political analyst, lawyer, anything that deals with leadership in today in the house. You're the one who's close to that. Now, and you're the one who started this topic of leadership. And you have heard Meshach saying he's going to go abroad, and then Ted is telling us we vie for this position. And then he has also told us that he will get tired with this leadership in 10 to 15 years. Now, what do we do in 10 to 15 years, Mana Timothy? So you tell us that. Please react to that, and also tell us what are the policies that we can put in place. Some of the benefit. I mean, of the things that we can put as measures so that we can avoid such things in the future.
On Meshach's idea about 10 to 15 years, probably he's talking from a Kenyan perspective.
Yes.
Tumechoka. Okay, that
Yes.
aside now.
Mm.
I must appreciate that today you've put me literally on a technical bench. I'm hearing terms I may not really understand, but we are learning. I'll do what I do best, that is public policy.
Yes, Team Mechak has said we are ready to mend a shule. So you understand.
Yeah, I do understand. I do
Mm,
understand. They should actually be the learned friends, not the other
mm,
ones.
mhm,
Um, about policies we can put in place,
mhm,
and I'd like to give examples of Iraq and Libya now that I mentioned it.
mm,
Um, the problem with the world is that we follow whoever is powerful.
mm,
Currently, Europe runs the world and they present ideas like liberalism, capitalism.
mm,
You find that even in our commercial contracts, like there was the Ngamia One project, we follow laws
mhm,
belonging to Europe. They were created to benefit them. They may benefit us, but not as policies, but rather as guides. For
mm,
example, you find that the contracts we sign, or rather the commercial treaties we enter, are following ideas from UNIST, okay, UNCITRAL, and UNDROIT, which are UN agencies dealing with commercial contracts and everything. Even our oil, when it's being mined, if it's being mined by a country run by a European firm, we give them to mine it for free and to benefit from it for a particular number of years as per the royalty agreements. So first and foremost, protectionist policies will benefit us, whereby if this resource belongs to us, if this oil is ours, we can benefit from your equipment now that we are really equipped. And in terms of skills, and I like Meshach and Collins, how they've defended engineers. We have our own engineers, and where we feel we have a deficit, they can learn from engineers from abroad, the way our military trains with the Britain Army and all that. So protectionist policies can help us. Of course, in the end of it all, we'll be labeled as terrorist states. As always, when you defy them, they label you as terrorists. It happened with Saddam Hussein. Before coming into power, the CIA supported him to conquer the throne after deciding to work with protectionist policies, whereby, for example, they say that whenever you come with your own company here to drill our oil, 70% of the jobs should go to like our locals. Those are protectionist policies. So we can copy from that. Another thing, you see, and I like the way we say this is Africa and Africa is our business. We need to come up with laws that favor policies that are suitable to what is on the ground rather than mirroring what works in Europe. You see, for example, the CBC, and I'm sorry for veering off the topic, but I'm creating a background. Some people complained critically that the CBC came too early, or rather we are copying things we cannot really match. You see, it's like you've never eaten pizza and you decide to go pizza. You may end up cooking something like you don't even know whether it's chapati or omelette, and so on. So the lex arbitration, or rather the arbitration law that we use for mining, for our business prospects, and for natural resource management, most of it follows UN policies. When you look at the UN, the machinery for the UN, you find that even in permanent membership, Africa does not have a single state. And as all of us have said, Africa has the highest natural resource base. But how comes even for those organizations, our presidents keep bowing to? We do not even have a say in it. It's like we are the ones providing the corn, and once the corn is cooked, we are left to eat the droppings below the table. So there's something we need to do about our policies. And then third, that you mentioned leadership, and I've seen it in one of our from one of the questions from the viewers about leadership. I'd like to give an example of former president of Uruguay. I think he retired in 2015. That is Jose Alberto Mujica. He was among the humblest presidents. He did not even stay in the palace. I'm not saying Uruguay has a lot of resources, but if we can copy such leadership models, then we are good to go. Look at Thomas Sankara.
I don't know if Meshach becomes the governor of Bungoma County or the president will be humble as such. Timothy, go ahead.
Oh, the wheelbarrow governor. Anyway. So we also need to be keen on the leadership that we put. If we do not have a firm leadership, a Pan-African leadership, and I like it the way our president, though, like I always say, I'm not sure if he really means what he's saying about Pan-Africanism, because I heard somewhere critics saying he's a Pan-African during the day and at night he's a stooge of the Western powers. So if we can have a Pan-African leadership with Pan-African mechanisms to govern our natural resources, I think we are good to go. If Sankara transformed Burkina Faso through such policies which are localized, Gaddafi did the same. It all goes back to our leadership, and I believe we can. And where we do not have a concrete leadership, what I believe is that will be used as dinner by the European people. So, we have resources. We need to find a way of managing it.
Thank you very much, Timothy, for that. I can see a question coming in for Collins. So, Collins, please take these questions and then you respond to them very briefly. Daily Edition with Hassan is asking, in hindsight. Okay, let me start with the first question that I posed. He started with, what role did international oil companies play in the failure to produce oil at Ngamia 1 and how did the involvement impact the overall outcome? And he follows that up with, in hindsight, what alternative strategies or approaches could Kenya have pursued to increase the likelihood of successful oil production at Ngamia 1, according to you, Mr. Collins? I don't know if Collins, you've gotten those questions. And this one, I like to post this one to. Okay, hold on there just a little bit. And then there's another question for us. This one, Tim, take it and then you'll be answering it later. Is there currently an ethical pipeline of young leaders who are being groomed to replace the current pool of corrupt politicians and leaders? So that is from Sipo Kwaku. That one will responding to it. Tim, take note of that. Now let us go back to Collins. So, daily edition with Hassan. That's the question. What role did international oil companies play in the failure to produce oil at Ngamia 1? And how did their involvement impact the overall outcome? In hindsight, what alternative strategies or approaches could Kenya have pursued to increase the likelihood of success oil production at Ngamia 1, according to you, Mr. Collins?
I think on the first question, these companies did very little, if any, towards to contribute to the failure of the project. And why do I say this? It's because if you look at these companies, they are companies working to earn a profit. So you can't go somewhere and do anything that is going to jeopardize the possibilities of you making a profit. Because these companies work based on numbers. Yes. That's why they decide to leave Kenya and go to another country, for instance, to produce oil. And if you look at these companies, it's Tullow Oil, Africa Oil, and Total. They are very big companies. If you look at their track record, they have performed very well in other countries. It's only in Kenya that you start seeing a disparity in the performance. So the constant thing is the companies do well. So if they come to your place and don't do well, I don't think a lot lies in their incompetence or anything of that sort. I think the problem lies within all the what will I say? Regulatory frameworks laid by the government. That's what I think prevented them from successfully producing oil from Turkana.
Yeah. So what are the alternative strategies or approaches Kenya could have done or can still do?
I think we should sit down with these companies and reanalyze the financial part of it, because Kenya has something close to 504 million proven barrels of crude, and if 200,000 gave us 1.2 billion shillings, you can imagine the amount of profit you can derive from that 500 million barrels.
Yeah,
and all this is going to benefit the Kenyan citizen. So I think there's a lot of bureaucracy involved, not technicalities of sorts. So I think if our leaders decide to sit down with these companies and come up with strategies that will favor both the company and the state, I will successfully produce oil from Turkana.
Thank you, Bwana Engineer Collins Maina. And there's also another question. This one is for Engineer Meshak. And I don't know if I'm supposed to be calling you guys engineers, but just for the benefit of doubt, let me do it. You know, when they are building roads and they're this question goes to, before Timothy, now you respond to the question that I posed to you earlier. This is from Omar Maulid, and this is for you, Meshak. In what ways is the presence of mines and oil resources in Africa either exacerbate or alleviate political conflicts and power struggles within the region? Compare Botswana has oil and top 10 quality life. You know, this is what Collins was talking about. We are speaking English and Omar just decides to do that thing. Now what? Anyway, let me not get to that. But Meshak, you have gotten the question and think about it. And let me go back to Tim. Tim, there was a question for you. But I see also there's a comment from Kevin Odenyo saying Kenya spends nearly half of her revenues on paying wages and allowances. I wouldn't say professionals in Kenya are being unappreciated, but instead term it as fate that we found ourselves here. Okay, that is very interesting from Kevin. who's also, I think, another engineer. He's part of those people who build roads that, let me not say what profession is that. Now, Sipo Kwaku is asking us, and Timothy, please respond to this. Is there currently an ethical pipeline of young leaders who are being groomed to replace the current pools of corrupt politicians and leaders?
Well, I do not know exactly how to answer that question, but basically, you do not expect a snake to give birth to a buffalo or a cow to eat meat. If whatever breed of politicians is corrupt and they're the
Yes,
ones running the system, and we've not seen any radical youth or anything, then
yes,
definitely that is what we expect to end. But now
mhm,
this is what, okay, this is the call I'd make to the youth watching us and to
yes,
people like Kwako.
yes,
We as the youth, we have the capacity. You've heard from the panel, even the engineers defending themselves.
yes,
Well, from whatever they defended, I do not know who will blame whatever buildings have been collapsing, but from
yes,
whatever they have said and whatever I'm saying, we have the
mm,
skills, we have the resources, we
mm,
can support our own. It all
mm,
goes unto us, we as the youth. We can mobilize our fellow youth, and as Malala, the famous
mhm,
um, education activist, keeps saying, with guns you can kill terrorists, but with education
yes,
you can kill terrorism. The problem
yes,
of corruption can be dealt with through education, enlightening people of
mhm,
how this money we are embezzling can
mhm,
benefit people. Because if our
mhm,
former presidents for 2 billion being swindled on a daily basis, per
yes,
year that goes to over 700 billion. That
mm,
money could have been used to build schools and to
mm,
alleviate the life we are living. So
mm,
directly to answer the question,
mm.
um, I doubt there is any pipeline of young leaders being mentored to replace whatever is there. I don't know if
Timothy, I thought, man, we were being hopeful today. You said, I thought we were being hopeful. What happened to
pardon.
the hope? What happened to the hope, or it went with Meshach to Europe? What happened to the hope? I thought you were being hopeful.
Reality is reality.
Reality is reality. Thank you, man. You know, I'm getting comfortable with today's show. It's really amazing. I'm really learning a lot from you guys. Until I'm not even realizing time is almost not actually not on our side. But there are some questions which are coming in, and we have to reply to them. Christopher Mwangi is asking rather, why can't we mine our oil if we can? I think that question was answered by Collins previously. But now, Meshach, you had a question, and there's also another question for you. I want you to answer both of them very briefly to the best of your ability. Stephen Manyaki, another petroleum engineer. Today we are just having a petroleum engineer. He's saying, a question to Engineer Meshach, and underline you have been confirmed as engineer. But this one today, I'm really doubting. Uh, give the oil industry is mostly given the oil industry. I beg your pardon. Given the oil industry is mostly controlled by oil marketing companies, how big does politics play a role in Africa? How big does politics play a role in Africa? Meshach, you had two questions. Now you answer to that, and you answer to the previous one, which was posted by Omar Maulid. He said, in what ways is the presence of mines and oil resources in Africa either exacerbate or alleviate political conflicts and power struggles within the region? Meshach, please be brief.
Botswana has oil and top 10 quality life. So I'll talk about Botswana. One thing that we are talking about here it's the main factor is policies and
Mhm,
governance. So when you have a good policies uh, that can favor the exploitation of these resources, or when the government makes good policies, these good
mhm,
policies can we know if we don't when you know one problem with these leaders that we have,
mhm.
they their stomach, they're always hungry for something. You see, that's the term
Yeah,
I can use. They're always
yeah.
hungry. Like when they see a deal here, they're always hungry. They want money from. So
Mhm,
when they're being given this, they say in
mhm,
Kenya you call it kitu kidogo. So they can do some. some corruption things, or I can say that they even forget to think about the future, of this country, and do away with some very, very important things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Botswana, they came up with very good policies,
Mm-hmm.
and also one thing that, and I think that's the thing, the president of this country has tried to borrow. He has borrowed a
Mm.
lot from Botswana also, about
Yeah.
the tax collection.
Mm.
There was a point there in time that, Botswana when the president was saying about the before Kibaki, we used to collect this amount of tax, which was
Yeah. Yeah.
below our
Mm.
capability. So I
Mm.
think also, but Botswana did the same.
Mm.
They widened their base of tax collection,
Mm.
and they had to, and because the corruption activities there is very low. There's
Mm.
no, so I think that favored a lot,
Mm.
in growing, in making Ghana among the top 10, as he has mentioned, because
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can, because Botswana right now is being compared to Argentina in terms
Okay.
of
Okay.
their per capita income.
Okay.
So with good policies, I think this country can go far. And also, let me say about the second question about politics.
Mm.
If politics can play a role in the resources, yes,
Mm.
it plays a lot. It actually plays a lot.
Mm.
Why I can say why Kenya has failed, and Uganda, you can see Uganda is continuing the exploration and production
Yeah.
process,
Yeah.
activities. I think there are so many things that we as Kenyans, we were they concealed some very, very important information that we need to be told of why this
Mm.
Turkana oil did not happen. Did not
Yeah.
actualize that project,
Okay.
because of why Uganda opted to do their, even after the West uh, threatening Uganda about all the global thing, this thing that's happening, climate change, about what. But Museveni told them, if it
Mm-hmm.
is about climate change, why are you mining yours? So
Mm-hmm.
I think he became rude, and that's what leaders, we need to think of ourselves. We need to think of our own. And one thing that
Yeah.
Museveni, even those people who are during the exploration activities and the production activities are from Africa. We
Mm.
have the one in Nigeria, from Nigeria, the company in Nigeria, and
Okay.
which is owning a major stake, and a minor stake is from Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So because they need, they want to export their, you need to create a good
Okay.
friendly environment with the West. You cannot ignore them. That's the thing. You cannot ignore the West completely.
Yeah.
And being good leaders doesn't mean that you ignore the West. We
Mm.
can work with them, but know the boundaries.
Okay.
Create some policies that will favor your own people. Don't just go there just write good, talk about good speeches, impress them or something like that, so you can get something from them. No, you need to
Okay.
protect your own, and also think about the future generation. That's the kind of leaders we need. We need leaders who can
Thank you.
sacrifice themselves for the future generation, because there is
Yeah.
no normally say that this we just borrow this art for the next generation.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
politics plays a lot. Politics plays a lot, and
Yeah.
even you saw leaders going to Turkana. I think we need to be told the truth. The media needs to tell us the truth. That's the
Yeah.
thing. Because what we are
Okay.
telling you, what we as telling you as engineers, that's what we are told. That's what we read from the magazine
Okay.
or the newspapers. That's what we are duped, and I can say that we were duped. That's the word.
Okay.
So we need to tell the truth of what really happened, because you cannot say that constructing pipeline from Turkana to Mombasa, about that it became the major economic issue, and
Mm.
also keeping them or those production processes. But why Uganda? Why Uganda? Why is Uganda doing exploration and production? Yet
Okay.
it is not. It is a very landlocked country.
Yes.
Why? That's the reason we need to be told. That's
Okay.
what the media should focus on.
Okay. 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 Thank you. Thank you very much, Engineer Meshak, for that intriguing also information. You have said you have tried as much as possible to alleviate yourself from blame, especially your fellow engineers. And I see as if you are blaming also the public policy people like Timothy, who now they should be telling us how they got themselves into those positions. So and the way they make those policies. Thank you very much for that. We are now wrapping up. Time is not on our side. So Sipo Kwaku is sending a thumbs up. I think he's responding to your answer, Timothy. Uh-huh. We have also Mordecai. Mordecai telling us Botswana is a unique case. Most countries harboring oil always have some sort of resource costs. Foreign influence of powerful actors such as the US equally fuel stability from these countries too. Also, Mordecai saying I stand to be informed by the engineers. Thank you, Mordecai. You know, Mordecai he studied political science. This fellow Mordecai. So when he says he's being informed by the engineers, I hope you have been informed. And then you have Christopher Mwangi saying, "Fun fact." So, what is it?
Senegal.
I think Senegal oil in Zambia typically runs the entire economy of Angola, bringing 90% of government revenue. I don't know if that is what you wanted to say, but Senegal is run and owned by Angolan government. 1 kg shillings equals Angola kwanza. Now, thank you for the fun fact. 6 times. Yeah, thank you. There's that comment from Christopher Mongi. Thank you very much for sending in your comments. We appreciate it. Now, guys, I want us to give our final comments, give our final sentiments as we wrap up, and please be brief. For those people who are saying they want to be employed abroad, they be brief and they tell us if they're going to help us. But it has been an amazing conversation. I've really loved. Actually, I've just been learning until time has really passed. I did not notice. We have another comment coming in from Ian Murray saying the world is under a drive to reduce carbon emitting energies. The world is moving to green energy. In the move to control climate change, I see no future for the Turkana oil mine. Okay, that's another conversation coming. A comment coming in from Ian Murray. Now, let us give us our final comments. And I want to start with you, Meshach, because you're the last person to speak. Give your final comments, and then we wrap up. And tell us if if there is hope for this country. Timothy gave us hope, took it away. I don't know if he's going to give us the hope again. But Meshach, your final comments.
Okay, so what I'll say about energy in Africa, and particularly let me talk about the crisis that we have in Africa. First, we need to sort the leadership issue, and I really like to thank our president here in Kenya, because I don't know why Kenyans are not appreciating this guy so that much. But if you look at the YouTube videos or where these other African countries, they're really proud of this guy. And even I saw him the other day in Congo. He was actually making his speech was actually so it had some very vital information that we need to actually look into. So we need the Gaddafis of these years and the Kwame Nkrumahs of these years, where leaders who are willing to sacrifice for the future generation.
Yes, and leaders who do not go abroad.
Let me talk about going abroad. Why I actually emphasize on going abroad. We actually saw leaders. Our founding president, that was Jomo Kenyatta, going to abroad and borrow some things there, and he actually brought them here in Kenya, and that was a foundation stone. So going abroad is not that we are trying to hate Africa. We are hating Africa. No, we are going to borrow some skills and some things, and also some knowledge of how we can also run this country, because the West is another good example of how they are funding themselves, how they efficiently, how well their countries, they run their countries. So we need to borrow some skills also from there, and also some funding. We need some also resources. That's resources, some fund in terms of money or anything, because money is not something that you can that you lack, and also say that you need to be in a leadership position. Here in Africa, that money is a very, very important thing, and
Yeah.
because actually in our constitution they say being bankrupt does not guarantee you to be in a leadership position. So you can see that very,
Okay.
very
Okay.
money is very, very important. And also,
Thank you. Mm.
I really like to thank the. But you see, let me first say one important issue that
Yeah, very
why
briefly, very briefly.
I talked about African Leadership Academy. But you
Yeah.
see, these African leadership academies that have been brought in Africa, they've
Mm.
been made so much expensive that it can only favor the rich. And the rich, we know
Mm-hmm.
here in Africa, they are leaders. So these
Mm.
corrupt leaders are even funding their children to these African leadership academies to go
Okay.
and learn. So I think, but I think our minds are being, we are being, in terms of maturity of our minds, we are
Mm-hmm.
getting well. And
Okay.
in future, we are seeing very, very good leaders. So I can see very good future. I see a
Okay.
very good future in Kenya. I can see the Kwame Nkrumahs, the Gaddafi. I see
Yes.
the future. So we expect some changes.
Okay.
This
Okay.
will be, and it will be forceful changes. Actually, let me say,
Okay. Okay.
yeah. So
Okay.
that's them.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Engineer Meshach, for your final comment. Actually, let me point of correction. It is actually Sonangol, what Christopher Mwangi wrote. It is not Senegal. It is Sonangol oil, and Sonangol Group Sonangol is a parastatal that formerly oversaw petroleum and natural gas production in Angola. So I think I should make that clear. So whenever we read, the time we read the comment, it was actually Sonangol. Okay, I think I've made that clear. Now, Colin, I want you to be brief. I'm sure you're the common Kurumas of this world. You're not going to go abroad. You're going to stay here and help us in this content.
I
So
will
please
be.
give your final comments as we wrap up.
Meshach started making plans of going abroad a long time ago. I
Yes,
remember
I
there's one
know.
day we were sitting with him somewhere, and he
Yes.
told me to bring only my passport. Told me he's a very well connected guy,
Yes.
but I only need a passport. He'll deal with
Yes.
everything else.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, we have lost Collins. You have lost Collins, but I know he'll be back. He'll tell us where they were going with Meshach. Tim, because you are still here, please give us your final comments briefly.
Today I'll not do a brief introduction like last time. Um, in conclusion, the
Mm-hmm.
absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. You see, there are many theories that have beautified these Africa resource curves, whereby we blame Europe for our poverty, despite Europe having left. Yes, I agree, they're still here institutionally. People think of it as a Jonah moment, whereby the whale of Europe swallowed us and threw us away, while left here to take our minerals. About the engineers, we appreciate the input you've brought to us. At least we now see the field in a new view. You're not entirely to blame because the government is like the big man. When you do not receive the support, or when you're coerced into supporting a given policy, there is not much you can do. Perhaps the reason we need not to blame the technical team for the Ngamia oil failures. Jacques Rousseau told us that we were born free, but
Mm-hmm.
man is everywhere in chains. So as Africa, we were born free, but now we are enchained with European ideology. It starts even from our mentality. You can see all of us talking about going to study abroad, then coming back as though we do not have good institutions in Africa. So in retrospect, and we have to be circumspect about these matters. In retrospect, there's nothing we can do about it. It already happened. We are already where we are. In prospect, there is much that can be done. This, what I'd call tumbocracy, our leadership that favors the stomach. It's
Okay.
not something that we need to be happy about. You see, even people look for politics as a career. Somebody finishes from 4, he ventures into business so that he can make some money, perhaps buy some voters. The youth of this country are the people we are looking for the change that we do expect. I've spoken much about public policy, which is my specialty,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd like to just give a brief overview of it. From
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Dye's word, a public policy is simply what the government chooses to do or not to do. If the government decides to feed school children for free, that is a policy. If the government
Yeah.
chooses not to mine oil in Turkana, that is a
Mm-hmm.
policy. What to
Mm-hmm.
do or not to do. So for
Mm-hmm.
Africa to disentangle itself from the
Yeah.
European powers, and I heard somebody speaking about, you see, the way governments are corrupt in Africa, everybody should be given like 1 million each, whereby our
Okay.
revenue is distributed to everyone. But I tell you,
Yeah.
Ashira, if you're not
Yeah.
used to money or if you're not already prudent in matters finance, there is
Yeah.
nothing that can be done about it. If I'm given 1
Okay.
million and I'm used to alcohol, perhaps you'll pick me somewhere in Murame
Yeah.
in the dens of alcohol. So for
Yeah.
Africa, there is a lot we can do. We
Mm-hmm.
depend on you as the leaders of tomorrow. That was my
Mm-hmm.
input for today. I have learned a lot. Today I came here. I
Mm-hmm.
really learned a lot from the engineers. At some point I was floating, but I'm happy
Yes.
we are now at par.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, thank
Thank
you.
you,
You can
Timothy.
put me at
Thank
any
you for
day. We
also.
can talk public
Sorry.
policy. I'm saying people have
Mm.
heard about public policy. It's not a well-known field like you would say politics, engineering,
Mm.
accounting, medicine. So if there is
Yeah.
any clarification you need on anything or you want to talk to me, I'm
Mm.
there on LinkedIn, Timothy
Mm.
Mabango, that is public
Okay.
policy practitioner. Thank you
Thank
and
you.
I appreciate.
Thank you very much. And one day we'll have a show. We just talk about this public policy, and we see some engagement from it. And actually, that that was a brief. That was a brief
Very good.
parting shot. Uh, Collins. Last but not least, the engineers, as you say. Please give us your final comments as we wrap up the show. Collins, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
As I was saying, Meshach started his story of going abroad a long time ago.
Mhm. We keep losing Collins. I don't know what's up. I don't know. But I can see comments, final
So,
comments from people.
mhm.
See final comments from some people here. We have Joseph Ombua saying Africa is a rich continent from natural resources. The problem we have is that some of Africa leaders are still in the hands of our colonizers. We are producers, but not the consumers of what we produce. And we also have Gerald Mbuthia. Gerald Mbuthia saying, great listening to you all. And we also have Sipo Kwaku saying, excellent learning forum. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. I think with that, we have to call it a show.
Washira,
Yes, Mr.
there's something I wanted to talk about here. Talking
Briefly,
about the
briefly, briefly.
resources. Yeah, okay. Let me mention something about the resources. There are
Mm-hmm.
some, I can see in the comment section people complain about natural resources, something like that. But we need to factor in that among the resources also we have in Kenya, we can say that human resource is a very is something that we can we are proud of, and it is something that is being valued globally. Like
Okay.
Africans, you can see even Kenyans being admired in countries like United States of America, where everywhere. So
Okay.
going abroad is not a very bad thing, but it is because
Okay.
still we are sending we are sending back those monies to our countries and
Okay.
to develop our countries and to do some other important things. So it is not a
Yeah.
very, it is like any other resource. It's like any
Okay.
other
I've
resource.
had.
Yeah.
We have had you. I think that goes on the record. It is not a bad thing. Colin, please briefly wrap up. Wrap up.
Oh, sorry, I had problems with my internet connection, but I started by saying I think resources in Africa is like a paradox of plenty. It's a curse in a way,
Mm-hmm.
even though it's supposed to be a blessing. But I
Mm-hmm.
think with these minds here, we can revert from what we used to know and create a
Mm-hmm.
better future for ourselves. And I've heard us talking about leaders a lot, But I think to some extent we need to take responsibility for the problem, because these
Yes.
leaders don't just elect themselves. I mean, we wake up at 5 a.m., stand in line for close to 5 hours to vote in a person filled with red flags.
Mm.
So we need to take responsibility and accept the role we play in our own suffering. But I think with the right leaders, Africa will go a long way in successfully exploiting its resources.
Mhm.
I think that's all.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Collins, for your brief final comments. And I hope you have never told us, where was Meshach taking you? Which country are you going?
He was taking me to the United States. But in the
Okay.
morning, I found out that all his stories were stories of Jabba. There are no connections there.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who sent in their comments, for everybody who watched us live, and anybody who's going to watch us later. We really appreciate you very, very, very much. Also, in a special manner, I want to thank my panelists today. We have Milan Meshach, engineer of petroleum, also Collins, petroleum engineer, Timothy Mabango, our policy practitioner. Thank you very much. I cannot really say how grateful I am. I've enjoyed. I've also learned today. Stay tuned for African Corner coming in on this coming Sunday. A very interesting conversation is lined up for us. My name is Mutadhi Washira Wanyaga, Mojiro wa Baria Karigithi, Thayo, Thayo, Thayo. Enjoy your week and the rest of your time. Good night.